Nice.
Very good.
Awesome. Sorry. We'll take attendance. Peter Eckel, Budget Advisory Committee.
Chris Harguth, Director of Communications.
Thank you, Chris.
Web and Digital Content Strategist, Lucia Magnuson.
Amanda Arts, Communication Strategist.
Laura Schultz-Cooper, BAC.
Jay Knight, back.
Jenny Nolan, Budget Manager.
Tim Dodd, Deputy City Manager.
Gary Engels, Finance Director.
Tyson Farnberg, Budget Manager Analyst.
Megan Wandel, Budget Advisory Committee.
Rita Russell, City Council.
Okay, and
Someone's outside.
Oh, I'll get it. Hey, let's go.
approval of the October minutes. Those in favor, or can we ask for a consensus? Anyone to approve the minutes from October 22nd?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Any seconds? I'll say an aye. I guess I can do that. Nevin, can you get a second for the approval for last month's meeting?
Yep. Seconder.
And all in favor? Aye. And I think we're gonna just move into the new business, which I show here. Give me 1 second. Okay, and it looks like I think communications is first, so we'll let you guys start.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty full agenda this evening, so I don't know if we want to take questions as we go, or we can save them to the end of the presentation. But we're here to present the Communications Department budget, and we appreciate you having us. So here we start with our department metrics. We touch just about every strategic outcome in the strategic plan, or every outcome area. You've had a chance to review our metrics. Did you have any questions, or again, we can save those until the end? Got about 3.
I think we'll save them till then.
Okay, we've got about 3 slides worth if you want to.
Unless there's something very exciting.
Yeah, right. We'll try not
All
to interrupt.
excited. What do you mean?
If you can't contain yourself, then please. So if you want to just take a quick peek here, and I think we have one more metric slide. And here's our funds returned to fund balance. That 18,500 represents the vacancy savings in our department. We typically don't have vacancies, but we are able to return that to the fund balance this year.
And the driver of those vacancies.
Well, we don't have it. That's so didn't Tyson, you may want to talk about that. And each department, that's like the average that departments typically have for vacancies each year.
Yeah, it's usually an average of the previous 5 years.
Of the previous 5 years. I'm not sure how ours was calculated, because we typically don't have.
We were probably over budgeted. This is just my assumption that we're over budgeted in our benefits area. We had a new employee start last year, and we always budget at the highest level of benefits, and that employee didn't take them, so we have an offset there.
So we were able to return 18,500 to the fund balance. Yep. And I'm going to hand it off to Lucia for our accomplishments.
Yeah, so fun slide. We have a lot of accomplishments in this department. We are churning a lot of projects. For marketing, so 26% average revenue increase across Inglewood, Recreation Center, Pirates Cove, Farm and Train. And that was from January to July 2024, and that was compared to 2023. And the projected gains was $1.02 million. We produced 4 in-house issues of the Inglewood magazine, which was a change that we implemented in 2024 of having a graphic designer and completely doing that in-house versus with a consultant. We completed 1,092 communication service requests from the entire city. We launched the council recap video series. And for website and accessibility, we received more than 2 million website views in 2024, and we're still climbing because we're still in 2024. We launched the Usability Lab program. This included over 32 interviews and identifying over 140 website improvements that we can implement. And then for a digital accessibility plan, we're 77% complete on that. And I also presented at the CMCA conference just showing how we are a leader in digital accessibility across all the municipalities.
Yeah, and I would just like to add just quickly that, we're not taking credit for that 26% increase in revenue, but we like to feel like marketing certainly played a role in that.
Definitely, yeah. And effective communication,
Yes.
which is a struggle for anybody, especially in government side.
Yep.
So great, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
That's good. Next slide. For neighborhoods, we had 86 neighborhood-led events, and that was across 25 neighborhoods. Those were supported by grants, Block Party Trailers, Movie Kits. We increased neighborhood group registration by 50%. So now we have a total of 20 registered neighborhood groups. And we published the Neighborhood Resources Strategic Plan. For awards, we received 3 awards. We got first place for Grassroots Marketing Campaign for Uniquely Inglewood, third place for Crisis Communications Plan, and that was for NAGC, or National Association of Government Communicators. And then we won the 3CMA Savvy Award Excellence winner for the Trolley Refresh and Ridership Campaign.
And these are given through what organization, or how are these assessed?
So the first 2 were NAGC, so National Association of Government Communicators. So we submitted those. Those were reviewed by a panel, and from those we got those awards.
Cool.
And
They have
these
what's
are both
called the-
national.
Yeah.
National, thank you.
They have what's called the Blue Pencil and Gold Screen Awards. So they have for, campaigns, brochures, calendars, et cetera, and then videos.
And there's an annual convention that
Annual
you'll go
convention,
to.
yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
that's cool.
Yep. And then Savvy 3CMA, is
3CMA, right?
is that national as well?
Yes.
City and county communicators, something.
I know.
I know how
I know,
that-
we should have defined it over here.
Municipal Association, that's what it is.
Yeah, there we go.
And that was in partnership with the Community Development Department.
Okay. For wayfinding placemaking, we installed 4 community message boards at local parks, so Bellevue, Cushing, Romans, and Jason. And there's 4 additional signs in production right now. And we worked in partnership with Public Works to install 7 traffic cabinets in September. And by the end of 24, we'll have 3 more traffic cabinets and hopefully another crosswalk. And then we also championed 3 Uniquely Inglewood murals. One was the intern project, where we worked with the summer interns to make the mural right outside the Civic Center. We also have the Malley mural, that's to the east of the Malley Recreation Center, and then the Felt mural, which was in collaboration with the Greater Inglewood Chamber of Commerce. That's it. Oh wait, that's not it. That's not it, excuse me. For Asana, so we have Asana, which is our project management system. We become more efficient in that system, and over the number of communication requests we've received, we've been leveling off this year, indicating we have a steady workload, and we're anticipating those project requests, and they're coming in regularly, and that's compared to previous periods. So overall requests are down slightly, but there's been an increase in these larger community engagement campaigns, which Amanda is going to go over.
Yeah, and I don't think they're down slightly, because that 2023 is through the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we still have a month to go, so it's gonna be fairly equal with our
Yeah.
requests.
And December's crazy.
And what are the nature of those? I'm just curious.
So they can be anywhere from, so the communication request versus an engagement campaign, they kind of all come through the same way. But some of these tasks can be as simple as create a flyer, create a social media campaign, all the way up to some of the larger projects like the Old Hampton Complete Streets or South England Flood Reduction, where we're doing, creating more websites, more social media posts, more newsletters, more magazine stories. So larger campaigns or smaller projects. So it just kind of gives a broad picture of all of the tasks that we're doing throughout the department.
So something within a couple days up to multi-year project.
Yes.
Yes.
Or even something that could be accomplished in a couple hours
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
through something that's ongoing for months.
But it's great, we're able to now track everything year over year and see what type of requests and kind of anticipate. And also communicate within our department on assigning subtasks and tasks within our department.
Oh, I'm sure it's a
And then
challenge.
she's gonna talk about our challenges here in a second, and that really, this helps us in the budgeting process. So we can say, you know, here's a need, or, you know, we need more staffing, or we can shift funding to bring the magazine in-house like we have, you know, things like that. So.
All right, so getting to our challenges. So we assume the Pirates Cove Light and Library Marketing in 2024 without adding additional staff. So that, in addition to all of our marketing, we hopefully made an impact on that increase in revenue for these departments. We've really beefed up our marketing for these divisions. We've had a lot of an increased amount of social media comments and questions that do require more staff time for monitoring those responses, just making sure we're responding to comments and concerns. We've had a big increase in comments this year. The House Bill 21-1110 takes effect in July 2025, so requiring remediation of thousands of inaccessible historical PDFs and going through our website, which Lucia kind of covered our accessibility. We're doing great as far as municipalities go across the board, but it is still a lot of work ahead of us. Our 4-year-old website is nearing its limits, and part of that is accessibility. So a redesign and a potential platform change is proposed for 2026. We're hoping to possibly put that into effect as well. And then just permitting challenges with our wayfinding and placemaking projects, putting in those 4 additional community signs takes a lot of permitting time, working with CDOT or whoever it might be to get those in. So just going through a lot of hurdles with that. Talking about those communication requests, while some of them are kind of, you know, smaller requests, maybe 1 to 3 month projects, these we've had been managing a lot more complex long-term marketing campaigns with multiple tasks, larger, you know, and multi-year projects, including Float Forward, Affordable Housing Campaign, the Parks Go Bond, all the current park projects that are going on, Vision Zero for our Safer Streets program, the Old Hampton Complete Streets and South Broadway Complete Streets, comprehensive plan supplemental update, and there are several more larger engagement campaigns that we're managing within our department as well.
And if you think about each of these campaigns, there are so many associated tasks with each one. So, and those don't get logged as service requests. So that's why our service requests, you know, while it's leveled out, we're probably still doing more work than previously.
We want to find out a way to scale some of the projects so we can rank like our level 1 projects versus maybe our level 5 level projects. That would be a goal, I think.
And those would be assessed on who the directive's coming from, or the value of the project, or some other terms?
My goal in the future would be to kind of like determine the level of engagement. If it's just creating a flyer, that's a level 1 versus a campaign that requires your, you know, meetings and social media management and, you know, website creation. That would be maybe a level 5. It's like a multi-year program with lots of open houses and things like that. So just kind of scaling it so that way we can get a better idea of what level of project. So while our individual tasks may seem to be leveling off, maybe we have more 5-star or 5, you know, level and fewer 1s versus other years. So that would be something to track in the future.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I'd say just back to our challenges, what's missing, which is good news, is some of our challenges from previous years, particularly with the rise in paper costs. Those have definitely leveled out. We haven't seen any paper increases, which we've been expecting, but we just haven't seen them. So that's been a good thing.
And real quick, just because I'm interested, I don't know, I'd love for somebody else to ask a question, but when you took the magazine in-house, I think I remember some of this. I assume that cost was one of the benefits. What were some other benefits that you all got out of it?
A full-time employee, and she's able to take on, I would say 90-95% of our graphic design is now all done in-house. So she's able to, and we've created a marketing division now that we didn't have last year, so we have 3 people in that division. One of which was a part-time employee, and she will be full-time beginning in 2025. And that was really because I think, not most, but the highest number of service requests comes from Park, Recreation, and Library, and we had a part-time employee that was handling those requests. So now we have a full-time employee, so that's going to be tremendously helpful.
So was the magazine already in-house before you came on board?
No, the magazine was done by a consultant, Slate Communications. Right.
And you were on board when all of that happened too?
No, not when we brought Slate on.
Okay,
So,
right.
yeah, I inherited the magazine
Right, okay.
basically in that process.
Right, Slate started. And
Slate,
so,
yep.
right, they were doing all of it.
correct.
Yep.
Yep, all of it, and now it's all done in-house.
Okay.
Awesome, so
What's your head count as a department?
6, or is it 7 now?
7.
We
Well,
should know this off the top of our
including
head.
you,
Including me, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 with me, so yes, 6 full-time employees and then myself. Ready for capital projects?
Yes, I can't wait.
So, I've said before that wayfinding and placemaking is not something that you would normally find in a communications department, but we love it. We have experience in it, so we're passionate about it. So we're supposed to do 3, but we're going to do 4. But we got murals, crosswalks, traffic signal box wraps, and history signage.
Definitely makes our city unique.
That's the goal.
So community message boards, you've seen these around town. 4 were installed in 2024, Romans Park, Jason Park, Cushing, and Bellevue. We have 2 additional to be installed on the off-ramps at Broadway and US 285. Those have been a challenge because of permitting with CDOT, which we've now secured those permits. So now we're just waiting for the cabinets to come in to have those manufactured and installed. They should be installed by the end of the year. And then we have 1 additional that's planned for Centennial Park, which I think is a really good location because a lot of people in that neighborhood and in that area don't realize they're in Englewood. So I think this is going to be really helpful. We also have a secondary gateway sign that is going to go in on that same stretch of Union. And those should be going in soon. Yep, like the next month. And then we've been talking about a Broadway banner program for some time on Broadway, south of Hampton. So the EDDA takes care of it northbound on Broadway. But XL Energy owns all of those poles. So that was, I think, about 8 months to get permission. So we've been working with them for the past 8 months, and we finally have secured permission, and we are exploring a program through the National League of Cities where they would pay for it. So they would pay for the banners, the hardware, and they would work with the business community to put logos at the bottom of these banners. So we're working with Darren Hollingsworth and Economic Development. We haven't started that outreach yet just because the attorney's office is looking at the agreement right now. But free is the key word on that. So, and if for some reason it didn't work out in the future, we have that hardware in place to have our own program. We also have the neighborhood signage program. We do 3 neighborhoods per year. You have to be a registered neighborhood to qualify for signage. Each neighborhood we get 2 signs. We work with the neighborhoods on designs to find out, the historic significance of their neighborhood, what's important to them, what images they'd like to see. We present the neighbors with options, they vote, and then we move on to the signs and what we call toppers. And I think I reported last year, and still, every sign that we've done in our program has been with wayfinding and neighborhoods has been produced by Englewood-based businesses.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the street signs themselves, have all of them been changed over, or are there still street signs out there that have the old logo on it?
So there's a handful that do. And if you've seen any, I would love it if you would report those to me so I can let Victor know, because I know Sean Delmargo in Public Works is trying to get those swapped out.
So when you're putting the toppers on, they would notice them at the time, right?
Yeah, Public Works does not install those, our vendor does. So they may not know differently, but I know I've seen them. They're out there still.
Well, right, and they told us back at the beginning, when we asked the cost of replacing all the signs, they said, oh, they rotate them on a certain, we're not gonna change them until they rotate them.
Oh,
So,
yeah, there's still some that have the logo. So,
okay.
yeah. that's it. I'll open it up to additional questions. Right now.
The challenges faced, is there anything that could help you with? I mean, it sounds like your workload is certainly increasing, you know, because you guys are doing so much and making such a positive impact, but so is there something we could help vocalize or better understand for you all?
And I think you've done that for us up to this point, and that's why we've, you know, having this new position, I mean, having the graphic designer come on board full-time, and now we have our part-time position become full-time. I think we feel like we're in a pretty good spot, honestly.
I think our biggest consideration for the future would probably be the website, a redesign or a new platform or changing what we have just to stay on top of all the latest technology, making sure it's accessible. So that's just something down the line that Lucy is researching. So that's something that we definitely would like to see happen in the next few years. Yep.
And there may be some grant funding available with that,
yeah.
so.
So I'm looking into grant funding with the state to apply for that. They really like focus on innovative technologies and benefiting residents, all residents with our services. So there's grant opportunities that are available next year. Deadline's June. With this usability lab program, I'm able to find pain points around the website and try to determine if we can find a platform that can meet all of our needs. We're doing so many good things in communications, especially with community engagement, and we've really been growing with that. So I want to make sure that we can serve our community in the way that we want to with our technologies. And right now it's not consolidated, it's just a bunch of different platforms. So looking into that consolidation piece with a new platform would be wonderful.
And the ability to apply for those grants is already done before council.
Yes, yeah, so council has signed the SIPA agreement. So we're able to apply for all the grants with SIPA.
And what agreement is that, just for my benefit?
It says that, it says that we will essentially work with SIPA, or State Internet Portal Authority, on any grants that we apply for. And they have their stipulations where when we apply for grants, basically we're gonna work with their team in order to execute whatever technology we are applying for. Yeah, so it's just a base agreement.
Okay. And does that hurt us, or does that really benefit us in any way, or is it just more of an access for our new web development to feed into state reporting? Or none of the above?
Wait, what were you gonna say?
If I may, a big
Yeah.
of course, just so that the state can plan out future infrastructure projects. And so like if they're already, if a municipality is already working on a project, they can like be fiber ready or increase their capacity for future fiber projects is really like the base of.
So it's a funding tool and also a mechanism to support infrastructure development or something around that.
Yeah, to make sure that things don't have to be redone, and also so that the state can better map what is where.
There you go. Yeah, and they focus on like the innovation and making sure that residents can access government services. Yeah.
Well, I asked you one more.
Yeah,
It's a great program.
it is a great program.
On the website, I'll call it development, I don't know what the technical term is. But on the website rollout development, is this mostly capital side, or is this operational expense heavy, or do we not know at this time?
I mean, it's not operational because we just don't have, I guess that would be another item that, you know, we don't have a dedicated funding for website improvement. There's not a line item for that. So that might be something we might ask for in the future. Now it's just, you know, we collaborate with the IT department, say, hey, we have a need, can you help us out?
Yeah, because I remember at least last year, and those of you here who were here can correct my memory, but I know that they've been on the capital improvement plan. You guys have had, the wayfinding was on there, I remember, at least a year. And so I just was sort of prompting to see if this is something that we'll see on the CIP come this spring.
Yeah. So this is where what I'm looking into right now is basically issuing a request for information to assess what type of technologies are out there that can meet our needs, especially if we're looking at other technologies within the city that we could lump into this new platform or refresh in general. And just see what's out there, request for information. And then from there, if we get proposals back that are reasonable, they meet our needs, then potentially it could go to spring budget. But really, I'm just trying to get information right now for it. Because if it's going to be like $1 million, then I'm gonna be like, no.
Well, and to your point, we have a lot of stakeholders across the city that will be using it, right?
Yeah, it's
So
every
it's a
department.
massive consideration.
It's a
strategically.
massive consideration. Yeah, so really I want to, right now I have a web and digital accessibility committee and they represent different departments, so all the departments in the city. And I'm having them just like look through if they've ever been frustrated with anything, I'm like magic wand it and just be like, what would be so nice to add to a platform or dashboard system, anything that you would want to see in your department that we could possibly consolidate over there. So again, it's a lot of information gathering, starting Q1 in 2025.
So realistically, we're more than likely would be a year out.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, 1000%. And then in terms of development, on average, getting it started and then implementing it is roughly a year. So we're looking roughly at 2027 if we start it right now for implementation.
Yeah, it's a major undertaking.
Yes, exactly.
And I know it's a topic around town.
Yes, exactly.
Anything else from anybody? Go to finance, I guess. Well, thank you all for coming. We really enjoyed the
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, please.
Thank you. First two slides are our department structure and department overview, so that's there for your reference. We'll discuss those individually. We'll start with our metrics. Some of these are also our accomplishments. So this first one here, we're required every year to have an annual financial audit. That's a state law, and it's also in city charter. What our goal in that is to get a clean or unqualified opinion. That means that there are no material misstatements in the report, that we're following our own procedures, following best industry practices, and following all the applicable laws as well. You can see for all the years we're reporting there, we have achieved that, and going back several years before that, I don't remember the last time we didn't get a clean opinion, so we're on track there. One other thing that finance does that's important for city departments and overall for the city is our city's credit rating. That can be a credit rating for the city in general or for individual applications. You see there on that top general obligation bond, that is for the police department headquarters. The next general obligation, that's actually for the water fund, so it's paid out of the water fund, that service on that. And then the stormwater also has some revenue bonds. Now, we have other debt issued, they're just not rated, and we don't always rate bonds, depends on the market at the time and how well rated the overall city's finances are. There is a cost to get a rating, so we don't always do that if the savings aren't going to, if the interest rates aren't going to offset that cost.
Okay.
Both of those Moody's ratings and S&P ratings for the general obligation bonds are the third highest that you can possibly get. So we're positioned very well for our credit rating.
And if you don't mind me asking, what have been the limitations for us to exceed our current level?
So what they look at is like regional economic indicators, always city-specific indicators, fund balance, revenues, trends over time, just like they would look at for your credit rating, your personal credit rating, some of the similar things.
So size might be one that would be sort of a limitation in terms
Size
of getting
would
a
be,
bigger.
especially us in the bigger metro region, and we don't have any real expansion potential. So they look at that as well, that's a limiting factor. We can't develop out, additional area, brand areas.
Understand. Thank you.
These two are somewhat related. GFOA is the Government Finance Officers Association. We present our annual financial report and our annual budget report to them. It's separate from our audit. It's a review. It's a lengthy review. I don't know about the budget, but I know the annual financial report is a 144-page checklist that they go through to make sure we're reporting based on their best practices and once again, laws and regulations. And they do that because they want you to be able to pick up a financial report, ours, pick up Chicago's, and the basic outline is the same. Obviously, the numbers are going to be different, but see this piece, and this piece, and you can compare cities across the United States.
And is that reporting that they provide for the cities, is that, are those reports looked at by municipal investors and other potential bondholders directly, or are there other factors that they might consider?
Those are about the only people that look at those reports. People that we owe money to.
Right.
Yeah, in all
Great.
honesty, that's really, that's
Thanks.
Did we not get it in 2023?
It's always a year behind on the annual financial report, so it's pending right now.
Okay.
We should receive it in the next 2 or 3 months.
And to be determined is we haven't.
We're still creating the 2024 report, so we won't get that till the end of 2025 probably.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny. She's going to talk a little bit about budget and maybe some of our challenges that we have.
Thanks. So for 2024, we're anticipating approximately $240,000 return to the fund balance. The majority of that is due to vacancies that we've experienced in our department. And we are, and because of one vacancy that we've held over, that's been vacant for the last 2 years, made the determination in developing the 2025 budget not to fund that position, in fact, return it. And if we determine that we will need that additional position in the future, we'll request that of City Council and the City Manager's office as well.
What position was that was difficult to fill?
It wasn't, not necessarily difficult to fill, it's just that we just didn't have time really to advertise it properly, but it was a finance coordinator position. We were thinking we would need it for the additional grant reporting that we were anticipating for the last few years, due to the ARPA money, some other grant funding, the CARES Act. I think it all kind of started right after COVID. We were kind of trying to gear up for all these additional reporting requirements, and it just didn't pan out the way we thought that it would. We just realized that we didn't need that position right now at this particular point in time. But we
Are you all short?
Currently,
Are you all short a person?
we have 2 positions that we're advertising for, a sales tax auditor position and then a revenue technician position.
We did just build 2 other key positions. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were
And that was just normal turnover for those 2, or we were out hiring for those as well?
I think we typically have 1 or 2 open positions. You'll see on our challenges that hiring has been. Financial accounting and governmental accounting, they're not the same as they are in the private sector. So you don't have as many people to choose from, and they tend to, when people get into those fields, they tend to stay where they're at. So it's been a challenge. It's getting a little better though, it seems.
And we're definitely seeing a change in the labor market. Again, this is post-COVID. It looks as though people are returning back to the workforce. And the last couple of advertisement of positions, we've had quite a number of applicants for those positions, whereas right after COVID, we were only having maybe 1 or 2 positions or applicants per position, really slim pickings. So definitely seeing a change in the labor market. All right, some of our accomplishments. The first 3 items that we've listed is due to our internship program. We were able to accomplish a few projects that we had on our back burner. First was our fixed asset inventory. We needed some cleanup in that regard, and they were able to help us there. Under tax and licensing, we had a data review of our Gov OS system, which is formerly known as MuniRev, so they were able to help us do a little bit of cleaning up in terms of what we are seeing as state type businesses versus city type businesses. So just a little cleanup in terms of where our revenue is coming from and better analytics there. They also helped us with revenue reporting and with the implementation of our Walmart business account under the procurement division. They helped us get that account set up as well as train internal staff of this new business account, which we're seeing some efficiencies very similar to setting up a citywide Amazon account. We have one account that all departments can utilize, and that saves them from having to provide our sales tax exemption certificate for each transaction, so they can just make those purchases a lot easier.
Great. Are we going to continue to plan to do this every year to help knock out some of these projects with young
We are.
interns who have
That's
Yeah.
desire to
one of
learn?
the reasons we gave up that position.
Okay.
While they're here for 2 or 3 months, they were able to knock a lot of this out for us.
We're very, very impressed.
Because those analytics take time.
Yeah.
Maybe you can find some future development with people who might want to work with the city, right?
Yeah. And in fact, we do have one intern who has continued with us through this 4th quarter. He's helping us with our implementation of our procurement and contract management system. So
I think it's great.
we are supporting our utilities department in their 3rd quarter. They went live with their utility billing system, which you all know about that. But our portion is in central cashiering. We help with the processing of utility payments, and those will come in through the mail or hand delivered by customers within the city. We also, as Kevin mentioned, we have received our GFOA Distinguished Budget Award for 2024, and we've applied for our GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for 2023, and we hope to hear within the next month or so on that. And then once we complete 2024, and we usually complete our audit around April or May of the following year, then we'll be submitting for our 2024 award as well. Challenges faced, as we mentioned, is just the hiring and retaining of qualified staff. We also, because there is citywide turnover, finance is responsible for the training of the Tyler New World system and accounts payable and payroll training of new staff. So that's just an added impact on our department when we experience staff turnover throughout the organization. We also are the other challenge is many times, and the departments are getting a lot better of including us if they think that there's a financial component of their implementation or their capital project or operational project that may require finances assistance. In the past, we were kind of like a very last minute thought. And then it's like, hurry up, we're near the final implementation of this project, but we need, finances assistance to just get us over that hurdle. So we can make the implementation of those projects much more smoother if we're invited to those conversations early on in the process. So as I say, we're getting better at that across the organization. And then the other challenge faced is just the maintenance of our current tax and licensing system, GovOS. there's just things that we have to communicate, you know, needs that we need and have to wait for those needs to be implemented and then.
It's a fairly old system and there's nothing better really on the market right now, so we're kind of stuck with it, but it takes a lot of maintenance.
Is this something that would interface with, let's say, a web redevelopment, or not at all?
I don't know.
I don't think so, exactly, but
And it's specifically a payment portal for government payments to us.
It is,
To
I
the
mean,
city.
we do have a link to GovOS on our website. But I think what the web design is looking for is it would be a financial portal that could process multiple payments. So if you had a utility payment, if you had a Parks and Rec class payment that you needed to make, you know, a reservation of a pavilion.
more of a one-stop.
Yeah, one-stop shop.
So businesses essentially are big users are complaining that it takes them too long to input the payments for various service or
Well,
fees.
it's just you're going to so many different disparate systems, you
Okay.
know, that currently are not speaking to each other. So you pay your utility payment and you know, through their system. You pay for a building permit through another system. You pay your sales tax through another system. And you could potentially be, you know, as a business within the city of Englewood, you could have a sales tax payment, you could have a utility payment, you could have a building permit payment. But now you're having to log into 3 different systems.
And that's more work for us too, or not?
They just maintain it.
Maintaining it, yeah.
And they don't talk to each other, so.
So my question is, because when they presented the utility billing system back, I think it was in 2020, it could bill for everything. Is that something that could be used?
We might have to look at the capability. I mean,
First, we have to get them straightened out.
we'd have to, be able to see it. If we
But
could.
that might be something that it would do.
Possibly, yeah. We do have some of that ones now.
I mean, in property tax, I work with various ones across the country, and I see, I'm not sure of this one specifically, I'll have to look it up later, but I know that there are some issues with them, but you would think that given the technology period that we live in, that at some point we could assemble a similar payment portal, right, to your point, that would allow us to be a little bit, well, easier for you on the finance side, right? Instead of truing up to everything. Okay.
The bank statement's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, does this fall into CIP potentially?
Most likely, yeah. Potentially.
I think it sounds like an interesting one that we should look at maybe. Cool. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Again, that's, you know, when we're wish listing everything, it would be lovely in a perfect system, in a perfect world. And the 3 capital projects that we're associated with, as we mentioned, our procurement and contract management system, IronWave. We're implementing that currently. Our intern that is still working with us, he's helping with the standard operating procedures as well as developing the training that we'll be rolling out to various department users.
We've really put a new focus on strategic procurement in the last year and a half. Now that we're fully staffed in that division, we want to leverage that even more. The Amazon business account, one account for the city, we get purchasing power because we're combining everything into one account. Same with the Walmart business account, those type of things. There's a small rebate, but the bigger cost savings is bundling all those together. So,
And then when we went live with the utility billing system, there were still some financial portions of the system that we had to wait until we kind of get our billing issues resolved. So we'll be hopefully finalizing that by the end of this year, by the first quarter of next at the latest, hopefully. And then we are also assisting human resources and information technology with the review and needs assessment of our current human resource information system. which is UKG. And we currently use that system to process our payroll, so that's why we're part of that discussion.
I actually currently use that system with a company I work with. I don't know, it works for me.
For payroll or the finance side, but it doesn't do all the HR functions.
Yeah.
That they would like, so. All right,
Is there
that's
any additional questions?
anything
That's
else?
all we had.
It's great. No, thank you all, as always. We'll spend, I think, what's our normal meeting time? It's 6:15 or 6:30?
6:30.
Got a little bit of time. Well, let's do 20 minutes and see where we're at on reserve. And,
Yeah.
I think we need to bend into a little bit of planning for sales and use tax next time. If people want to volunteer to do something, I'm happy to help. So, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so I went through a lot of the handouts that Jenny had sent over to us. Thank you for that. And now remind me, we were reviewing the reserve policy that has kind of landed in the BAC bucket from council, Chair. Is that correct? So what I wanted to do was something that when I was new-ish, that we would kind of go through how did we get to this point. So back in 2016, the city adopted a 16.67% reserve policy, which is right in line with what the GFOA recommends. And then in 2020, there was a decision to review that policy, see if they wanted to change it. And the city ended up going with, and I'm just going to go ahead and read through this. Notwithstanding other requirements and fund balance designations as described herein, it shall be the policy of the city to seek and maintain an unrestricted reserve in the general fund balance as follows: an unrestricted reserve range of 12% to 21.4% based on the annual operating revenues or expenditures, whichever is more predictable. As authorized by City Council, the unrestricted reserve may ratchet down to no lower than the 12% range floor and used to offset operating expenditures in excess of revenues. So that 12%, I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but the swing is up and down from that 16.67%. And the city back in 2020 was recommending a reserve policy that would be ratcheting from 8 to 12%. So I think maybe that 12% kind of became a target in a way where we wanted to at least go down to that point where the city felt like they could use those funds if they needed. But they kept that large range and then put 16.67% right there in the middle.
And that was on either revenue or expenditures based on the terms now, just so I get them correct, whatever was considered to be or seen as being more stable.
Yes.
So real quickly, Tyson, do you have that worksheet view that has some color on it, for lack of a better description? I think it's called the 2015-24 to 2024 budget general fund operations sheet.
So it'd be that copy of 2015.
And what was the genesis of the
Okay.
2020 review?
That I am unsure.
Thank you. So in looking at that, I mean, oh really? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Jenny, do you remember, that ratcheting came from Councilmember Ward?
Yes,
And
and
he was on this.
it came from the Budget Advisory Committee when Councilmember Ward was on the committee.
Okay.
Idea that he had, and he brought that forward.
Well, I guess now we're looking at it again, so that makes sense, right?
And, you know, it's not out of step with other municipalities around us.
Great.
I think, you know, my question before I was going to even pass any judgment on this was real quick. So the potential uses that may be for the following, for that reserve is a loan to another fund or component unit, a one-time operational request such as a feasibility study, pilot projects, and programs, capital projects, fund those that would reduce O&M spending first, and then an annual operating deficit due to extraordinary events such as the 2008 housing financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic or declared disasters. And so I did not live in Englewood in 2020. I was going through it in Littleton. But I did just want to put it to the people that have been here. Was there any concern that the reserve policy was either too strong or like we had just enough? Like what happened during that time frame?
I think that, and I'll just speak from what I think was going on at that time, is we've had a pretty hefty reserve fund balance. And I think Councilmember Ward was concerned that we have ongoing project needs and that money's just sitting there when we should be spending it when we had it, and then tighten things up when the economy got to where I mean, I don't totally understand it, but that's what I remember the discussion about.
So I definitely was not here, but I reviewed the footage from those meetings about 1 million times now. And you're exactly right. I think another aspect of it was, I think several council members, but especially Councilmember Ward, was also reflecting on the fact that we were technically out of alignment with our own reserve requirements by exceeding the reserve percentage because the way that the reserve policy was written at the time, it didn't really sound like we were actually able to exceed that 16% number. And so by doing so, there was some concern also that we were potentially out of alignment with our own policies. In addition to the fact that I think there was also, to your point, some idea that like creating a better defined policy might encourage the city to use funds as needed, as opposed to just hoarding money in a account that would never be used.
Right. Thank you. And that leads us pretty much to now. So the current policy is that 12 to 21.4%. Back in 2020, again, there was that recommendation that we could maybe go down to 8 to 12%. But I don't know how to make a judgment call on that. I wanted to put that to the committee and to other attendees just to hash out whether we can go lower, should we stay as is, and what our recommendation to council should be. I don't know if we're going to figure that out tonight, but
It would be great.
that is how we got to here. So
Yeah, and I will add to your point, and they're on the notes, and Tyson, can you zoom out just a little bit for me? Thank you. I just want to see 24 if we can with the labels. That may be hard. It may be hard. Real quickly to add to what you just mentioned, Littleton will all include a Tabor minimum of 3%. And I know there are people that are more expert on that than me in the room, so if we need to go into that, we can. But understanding that, Littleton is 8 to 18% range. The Denver contingent reserve was 2%, then they had an unassigned 15% of the general fund on an expenditure basis. And then I showed us as 12 to 21. And Sheridan had basically a straightforward 3 months of city expenses as a reserve allocation, just for some bearing.
And for additional clarification, I believe our range is exclusive of that Tabor reserve.
That's correct.
That would make sense.
I think so I definitely do have some relatively strong feelings about adjusting the range. But I think one of the other, if I recall, one of the other pieces of guidance and asks from council was to potentially look into how we adjust where we are in that range. And I think that question, again, we may or may not make much progress on how we're looking at that today. I did do a little bit of research into how other localities in Colorado do it. I have to say most of them don't just have like a flat formula, which is really, that's left to my own drudgers. I would love a formula that looks at economic data over, a 3 or 4 year period, and then based off of relative adjustments to that, shifts, or at least gives us an indicator of how to shift our own range. And for the most part, it seems like a lot of localities that do have a range just adjust it by whatever. Oftentimes it's specific accounts. If they have any unspent funds within those specific accounts, they'll reattribute those to that reserve. That seems to be the most common way that other localities with a range to it, but
Real quick, interrupt you real quick. Was there a particular account that they were looking at, or was it as general as, which is what I tried to show on the screen, was here's another way that we can sort of take this data in and look at other ways of funding potentially, or a backdrop, or whatever it is.
It varied by localities. Oftentimes it was like unspent capital or things like that, or some had like just I guess probably the most common was just like unspent general fund, which makes sense, right? It's the big account. But
Let's see.
Can I ask a question? And I don't know whether this would apply or not. I think something came up, was it 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the budget supplementary? Wasn't there something that came up that if we had this same ongoing thing, we may get into trouble and not realize it until we're looking at do you remember what I'm talking about, Jenny?
I do, and it's basically if we had like a downturn in the economy, and at what point will we adjust our spending? And I think we made the comment that we are reviewing our financial situation or picture with council on a monthly basis. And we feel that, with that cadence, I think we'll have enough of an understanding, or we may start seeing a trend within a month or two, if we start seeing this contraction in our revenues, that we can then come back to council with some recommendations as to how we might mitigate, or offset that reduction in revenue.
So whatever happened was kind of a red flag, right? And like I said, I don't remember exactly.
I think it's almost like a what if scenario if we start seeing it. Because we're hearing, in the economy, things are slowing down.
Right.
So, we're starting already to get some feelers but now we just don't know how it's going to be impacting us at the local level. But on the national level, we're hearing that.
But does that play into what we're talking about here?
It can, in terms of when we're starting to ratchet down to that 12%, that we know in the short term we're going to need to offset this revenue shortfall. And in the short run, yes, we can do that with that unrestricted reserve. Again, we have just so many dollars to play with, and then eventually, if you are, using up that we almost have $12 million in that reserve. If you're using up those funds on a very quick basis, we've got a larger problem facing us.
Right.
But if we know that we're dipping into it, for a year or two, and then we adjust our spending accordingly, then we can then slowly, after that year or two use of that reserve, we can then slowly start building that up once revenues start turning around.
Right, and now I kind of remember that it was, because we were drawing down on the unassigned fund
The
balance.
unassigned, yeah, and the unassigned fund balance is different to our reserve. So once we use our unassigned fund balance, then the only other funds that we can start dipping into would be that unrestricted reserve.
And what's the unassigned balances roughly?
I don't know, is it around a few million?
Uh,
5 million?
Currently, it's about 7.
So-
By the end of-
7 million?
By the end of 20, we're growing some of that down in 25 budget. Our estimate was the end of 25 at about $1 million.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
The estimate was to end 2025 with an unassigned fund balance of $1 million. That's on top of the 12 million.
Well, I mean, and I was just looking, I mean, it's in this sheet. You know, the run rate we're at now, we're gonna lose over $3 million this year. And the last time we were underwater just on just on revenue and expenditure in the general fund was 2015. You know, so I guess from that standpoint, why are we hurting so bad here, or at least it appears that way? And what's driving that? How made that impact our decision to say, hey, what's up with our reserve policy? Just brainstorm.
I think part of this conversation is when does that trigger those harder conversations?
Yeah.
What level do you want to say, okay, council?
Yeah.
Something.
And it's
Is 12% enough to trigger that conversation? Should it be 10 or 15? I think that's some of what council wants direction on is, or input on is what level is it? Start flashing the red light.
it almost seems like it's part of that, or an outcome of the monthly review that you guys do. Like you said, if you start seeing trending down, things are trending down over a couple months, you know, what point is that red flag? Is it a certain percent? You know, which may not be fair either, but you know, that's probably probably something like that, you know.
Well, a lot of, and it's,
Inflation
some of it's
number,
timing, but a lot of why the
combination.
unassigned fund balance is gonna be that low is because council has allocated $25 million to capital projects over the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, and that seems that that's
Putting
been,
it to work.
right, which definitely makes a lot of sense.
But again, that's one-time money, and eventually that will, you know, as you allocate it to capital, it will eventually dry up.
Getting back to the reserve policy itself, I think another sentiment that I've picked up on, and this might just be what I'm interpreting, but is part of the idea of the range is to make sure that the city doesn't start cutting programs and staff at a short-term economic downturn, right? And that we continue to be appealing. And so that we can spend down on that reserve, which is part of why I think the reserve range is so large. Now, since we put that range into place, like you were saying, we've stayed at the same relative percentage. But what I think, one of the reasons why I would love to see us utilize an actual formula is I think that's a good indicator of when we should be inclined to pull from that reserve, but also at the end of, you know, a year or two, maybe even 3 or 4 years of pulling from a reserve, right? We could also use that formula as an indicator for when to start contributing back to that reserve. And I think month-to-month data is definitely helpful, and I think that could be something that the council takes into consideration. But I really think what I'd like to see is year-over-year trends for like a multiple year, maybe a 3-year period to try to influence. And I think the key here too, knowing that we're looking at multiple year trends, is relatively small incremental adjustments as part of the recommendation or as part of any change to the policy, right? So I think like looking at maybe, you know, a 0.5% difference, right? In how we set the reserve indicated by like a 3-year trend. And that trend, I'd say, some of the indicators that we might want to incorporate into that trend are like our sales tax revenue, right? Because that is an indicator of like consumer confidence in our local economy, as well as like maybe population change, right? Because we also want to make sure, right, even if we're seeing increased sales tax revenues, if we're actually seeing our population start to move or something like that, that's an indicator of like a totally different set of economic issues.
Well, I mean, I think you're 100% correct. I do think it's going to be difficult to find that calculation. And I do think in terms of spending it, in terms of, hey, we need to use this reserve, you know, a lot of that's going to be decided because something is going wrong, or there's clear and present reason to use it, and the council is going to decide. So I think I'm more of the mind that the 16.67 is recommended by the GFOA. So it's right in the midpoint of the range. And if we say like, okay, it's a good target, let's try to stay near there. In case of needing the funds, we have them there. But I think what I would want is something clear that says, okay, if we dig into those funds down into the 12%, how much time do we allow to refill back up to the recommended 16.67? So we give ourselves that range, and then I don't know how we would determine this, but should it be decided later, we have the ability to go past that 16.67 if we learn something from whatever the downturn was that caused us to go down to that 12%. So I don't know if we'll be able to determine when to go down, because I think that's going to be so situational, and the council is going to have to make that decision kind of based on the information they have at hand. But I do think we can make a formula that says, okay, that was a short-term thing, and we need to come back up to 16.67. How much time do we need to do that? Is it a year or 2 years? I think 2 years kind of made a lot of sense to me, as far as being able to both reassess why we spent the reserve and then build back towards it. But
Well, and I think we could put a number on that. So a prior 3-year look says this on an annual basis for a ton of metrics you could put on here that would suggest like, okay, you know, here's a $3 million variance over that time, or where our expenditures are in allocation too high for our revenues, or our revenues are sliding at X percent, which comes to $2 million a year, whatever the number is, so that we could have a rolling calculator that looks back and also looks forward, well, up to a year. We only have a year at a time budget, right? So, yeah, I agree. To your point.
Another element that we're potentially missing is a lot of localities that do have a range have, as part of the policy, a scheduled review. And I think, like, I'm not necessarily saying that we lock ourselves into, oh, this formula means that we have to reduce, but more like by combining that with like, and I know council already has a ton on their plate, and scheduling, adding another routine meeting to the schedule might not be idealistic, but I think having that routine review might also, especially when paired with like these kind of trend data indicators that we use to generate a suggestion about where we should be adjusting, I think might help us do more than just say, all right, we're at the percentage that we were last year. Let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and while I know you have something else you want to say, and we'll stop at less than 5 minutes. But one of our things that, you know, we've kind of been coming to is, you know, for the departments, is there a target to give money back to the return balance for the departments? And is that something that is worth exploring if there's not? And then we also have kind of been getting around, what was the goal for this year? Did you achieve the goal? And I guess for the purpose of this group, it is a budgetary and call it financial performance one. So I think we kind of wanted to reiterate the history, which you did. Thank you for that. And I think we also kind of wanted to say, hey, COVID happened recently. Was that a good barometer for our reserve policy? And it would seem to be that there were no major issues. But that's just one. And I don't know about the housing, the mortgage collapse. I don't know who all it might have been here then. But.
You know, one thing I think that's interesting is I think our sales and use tax did dip during COVID, right? And the thing that brought us out of it was the manufacturing in Englewood.
So I think the first year of COVID, we saw a little bit of a decline, but then it recovered very quickly, sales tax.
Well, just for the group's benefit, thanks for bringing that up. Sales and use tax makes up 63.9% of the total revenue allocation, followed by charges for services at 9.7, followed by property tax at 7.8, followed by franchise and other taxes at 6.9, and the rest were under 3.2, which was licenses for permits and fees. So sales and use tax, certainly we rely on it a lot.
So in order to provide guidance to council, I guess what we can maybe agree on tonight is, are we okay with the range as it stands? Because I think maybe, but before we even decide on changing the range, I think we need to decide on a better methodology for how does it go up and down? And so I think that could be the target of what we put into a report. But I want to make sure, do we want to keep that range for now and then decide how to use it, and then have that be what we report on?
Yeah, I agree. It'd be nice to get something lined up for now, and it would seem to me that given some of the recent changes, what year was that you mentioned, Rita, that we adjusted to the 12% base?
When it was before 2020, wasn't it?
There were discussions for several years, I think 2020, council took action.
Yeah, and now the unassigned balance is effectively going mostly away after 25. So we definitely have some new things moving around the range. Given the comps, the range is reasonable. So I would move to say that we're okay with the range and we should think about ancillary metrics, looking at financial data in the last, we have all these years here just at a high level to say, okay, what are some run rates and how might we look at this so that we can say, yeah, the 12% to, what is it, 18% is, or 21%, well, that's a big range. We're back to that conversation again, so.
Yeah, but I second that. I don't think anything's happened where I say you mess with the ranges. It's just, when you ratchet, I think makes more sense from a recommendation perspective because nothing's telling us that you need to adjust that range. Hopefully nothing does happen, where we're at a point where it's like, okay, council needs to make a decision because we're in that bad a shape or that maybe that great of a shape, either to be more optimistic.
I like that, yeah. So it's really the functionality of the ratcheting and decision around that within the range.
And I think if the need comes, the committee can certainly be leveraged to provide advice or another input on what the range could be. But yeah, I don't see a need. I would agree. I don't see a need to change that.
Okay, so we have a second to continue forward with saying, yes, the range is reasonable. We'll start working on sort of the decision and data, the metrics that go into saying, hey, when do we back off that 18%? Or when do we say, oh, we got to have more than 12? Or what gets us to that decision process? I guess I have to move to a vote. Can we agree that the range from 12 to 21% is acceptable for our next work on that reserve policy?
Okay. And maybe one thing I know we're at time to consider is, going along with the formula, I totally get it, but, maybe instead of a specific formula, are there thresholds there that we say, council, we're, high lows or whatever it is, that you begin to start seeing, like if you see, over a couple month period, you see sales and use tax, dip or go higher, then makes a consideration to your point. If you're seeing bigger changes over a 3-year period from a data perspective, hey, there's a threshold there that you can consider. Maybe that threshold's kind of big at first, and then you use it, but maybe that could be almost like a dashboard kind of thing,
Totally.
Not saying that somebody has to go create a dashboard, but it's like, okay, kind of that red, yellow, green of, hey, this is kind of getting concerning,
Agreed. Well, I'll volunteer, oh, go ahead, Nevin, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. If I could put just like one thought out there, I don't know when we're gonna be able to return to this discussion, but between now and whenever we do, I would love it if the members of this committee would do some reflection and potentially research looking at what sort of criteria they think should be thought about, whether that's in an actual formula or whether that's just, hey, this is a list of bullet points for whomever is going to make this decision, or present a recommendation to council, right? What criteria should those individuals be looking at, and or what criteria should be incorporated into a formula? And the other aspect is, I'd say, I'd love it if individuals on this committee were to look out. I did some research among other localities within Colorado, and it seems limited, but I'd love it if people could look and see if there are any examples of how other people are doing it that folks on this committee like or would potentially want for us to replicate with an asterisk. And I'd love it if the next time we had this conversation, right, if people could come back with those ideas.
Great. Yeah.
One of the ideas that I was unsuccessful, but I didn't spend too much time on it, but looking at areas of the country that are a little bit more volatile as far as things that happen. So probably more coastal areas. I was actually thinking more so about California and how it handles fires. But just trying to see for a state or a municipality that has to deal with this situation a little bit more frequently. Think about it with a lot more probably intensity than we necessarily do. So we'll take a deeper dive into a more volatile nature.
Great.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so I like your suggestion. I don't know if we need to all agree, but I mean, I'll do 2 minutes of what I can work up on the analytics side, really the financial side. And if everyone wants to, you don't have to, but if you want to do a 2-minute presentation, that might get our creative juices flowing next time. And then also I want us to start on the sales and use tax discussion, which I think we need to work on a little bit in December. Does anyone want to volunteer to get that ball rolling? Or I'm happy to do it.
I'm sorry, do you mind clarifying with the?
I think we just wanted to decide really how the metrics are being presented from the departments around the paving, road maintenance, and then also the police department for alternative policing, and just get the discussions going to say really how can we help them work through this reporting, let's say, for the taxpayer in this case.
Sure.
Okay. And I think brainstorming is good if you want to give a 5-minute presentation or somebody else wants to, or I will share in the duties. So.
I have my one strong piece of feedback on that, but I don't mind presenting, but I don't want it just to be like the Nevin opinion presentation. Well, so if people have strong opinions about it, I'd love feedback, and I don't mind compiling that into a PowerPoint or something.
I would lead into your opinion, because that's part of the reason you are here is to voice it.
My opinion is I just want an additional column with the FTEs sorted out and the descriptions for that, and that's really all I care about.
Okay, cool. Look forward to hearing about it, and let me know how I can help, and we'll involve the group as necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
My daughter has a band concert at middle school.
Oh, that's great.
On the 7th.
Who's against ready?
But,
In town or away?
no, it's